Welcome to Know Your Fundamentals. I'm Kelly Berthold, and I'm here to help you thrive in life, family, and career. In each episode, guests share their passions, and we link it all to mental wellness and flourishing. So let's get into it. Hi, welcome today to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast. Today we're thrilled to welcome Kayleen Robison, a dedicated realtor with the Hodges Flanagan Team at KBB Realtors, who is passionate about helping people find not just a house, but a true home here in Happy Valley. So the main topics that Kayleen will talk about today, she'll explore all things real estate and delve into creating a genuine feeling of home in Happy Valley. She'll also share insights on how to navigate the local real estate market and building meaningful connections with the community. So welcome, Kayleen.
Thanks, Kelly. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do right now.
Yeah. So I'm a realtor with the Hodges Flanagan Team at KBB. As you said, obviously I am a salesperson, right? So I help buy and sell homes for clients of mine in Center County, and I'll also go to the contiguous counties to here. I help them get used to living in Happy Valley if they're new here. One thing that I really care about in my business and with my clients is making people feel comfortable and making them feel like this is the place that they should be. Whenever you're buying a home, yes, you need somewhere to live, but you want to make sure that it's somewhere that feels right to you and somewhere that you feel comfortable, you feel like you can thrive and you can live your life how you want to. And that's not just about the home. So for me, I try to be be my clients' realtor for life. Like, our relationship doesn't end once closing day is over and they have the keys. So I try really hard to form strong connections and a strong bond with my clients. I like to think of us as friends through the transaction and through, the years beyond that as well. That's always key in my business. I also think that this town can be really unique in it being a college town. The dynamic of just how everything runs here, how our seasons go, and we follow Penn State so heavily, it can be really stressful for folks if they aren't part of that community. And even if they are, it can be difficult to find a way to kind of live your life in conjunction with what's happening at Penn State. So
people live here through the semesters. Even if we're not necessarily working at the university, it's like you still are actively living a calendar that feels like it's per an academic semester. When is it more empty over the summer? When spring break, where are people like doing these certain things? And so many activities are also like college driven, all the different sporting events. And, so talking a little bit about that with the culture element of your realty work in this town, what's that like for you? And how do you help your prospective clients, whether they're locals or they're new in town, acclimate to that culture and the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So locals have a little bit of a leg up on that. We experience it day in and day out. Folks will have areas of town that they'll try to, avoid whenever school is in session, right? Like, people don't always feel the need to go downtown or, to the busier parts of State College whenever school's in session. But I think for folks that are coming to town, they may have never lived in a college town like this before. And our dynamic here is super interesting because we are on that semester system, whether we want to be or not. So traffic fluctuates and busyness of restaurants and stores and things like that fluctuate so much based off of when students are here and when faculty and staff are working, So I think just educating my clients and getting them to understand that it is that flow that can be really helpful for folks whenever they are new here. So it's just really interesting, really an interesting market. I think we tend to take for granted a lot of things that Penn State brings to us as a community also. We have so much culture, so many events, so many restaurants and stores and things like that wouldn't exist if Penn State wasn't here, or if we didn't have these things right in our backyard. So I think showing my clients kind of how that works and what options are here is always part of my pitch, I guess, for lack of a better word. I like to talk about real estate a lot, but I think the key that makes people appreciate this area whenever they buy a home and makes them feel comfortable and feel like they can get used to the neighborhood and things like that is just knowing how things work and knowing what options there are. So one thing that I try to do regularly, seasonally actually, is I make a guide that I send out to all of my email list and all of my past clients. And it'll have, restaurant recommendations, stores you should check out that are maybe seasonal things. I'll have events that are being offered for, adults, for children, things on campus, things in the outskirts of town, maybe even an hour away from here, I'll have something on the list because everybody has different needs and different desires of things that they want to do. So for me, it's a big push to get people to enjoy our local businesses and also obviously contribute money to our economy. That's super important too, right?
Yeah, so connecting all these dots of where you're coming into this town, it's a blend of a college town, a small town. I don't know. To me, State College lovingly and like just Center County and Happy Valley in general is like a little bit of like a Bermuda Triangle. Like things
absolutely
happen here and exist here and function here in ways that if you go to a lot of other like towns, maybe even college towns, depending on like how close they are to major metropolitan areas, we attempt to integrate into like this community, and it's not necessarily obvious, right? There's a lot of things that are just not obvious about it. So we'll check in and talk more about those kind of things in a little bit, but tell me a little bit about what brought you into doing what you're doing now, and talk a little bit about your history and what interested you into real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a freelance graphic designer, and then COVID hit and shut everything down and locked us in our houses for months and months on end. So by the time the world started opening up again, I was tired of sitting in my house in an office by myself. So I decided to look for a position where I would be going into an office again. And I took a job at KBB, who's one of their staff, doing like some marketing and some stuff like that, and helping out the other realtors in the office. And I was there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then our broker of record, Liz Piazza, came to me and she said, Kayleen, you have too much of a personality to be sitting behind a desk. She said, you should get your real estate license. So she pushed me and she guided me into that process. And, here we are now.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty quick shift, but I think she was right. And I appreciate her being so forthright with me and just saying, like, you're so friendly, you're so personable, you need to be more client facing. And I love it. I get the opportunity to help people every day, help people through these major transitions in their lives, like moving for a job or moving because you want your kids to go to a different school, or, downsizing, divorces. There are so many reasons that people need a new home. And I'm happy to be part of that.
Yeah. So how many years were you doing graphic design before you switched over to real estate?
Yeah. So I went to college for graphic design, and then I kind of did freelance work since then. So for quite a while. So the design work and the marketing background that comes along with that definitely plays into real estate. I did hair for a long time to put myself through college, design school, and the personal skills that I learned from that were definitely instrumental in cultivating my personality. First off, it's hard to be in the beauty industry and be, with new clients every day and things like that, and not learn to have conversations, and I think those two things together have really primed me for being in real estate. And it also just made me appreciate helping people. And that's kind of what I love most about what I do, is just helping people through all of these transition times, because that can be really scary if you don't feel like you're being guided, if you don't feel like you know what you're doing, if you maybe have to make quick decisions and things like that. It can be really scary, especially whenever you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of an investment in the home, and, where your family's going to grow, where that's going to thrive. And so it's just a very unique skill set, I think. And I appreciate what I do a lot.
Yeah, just spending a little bit of time like diving into that appreciation. I think being able to have some reflection on our interests. So sometimes we land into a position that allows us to kind of combine a lot of different interests at the get-go, and we don't necessarily have that much exploration of I wonder what I want because I'm kind of just doing it and I feel satisfied.
Right.
And other times it's like, well, I do like doing this and I know that I'm interested in, say, like graphic design. And so like I know I'm going to do this for a little bit and I get to be myself and I get to explore things that feel meaningful to me as I'm doing here. And I know that there's other things I also want to do and I want to explore. And it sounds like you did those things. Mm-hmm. And then, I think a lot of us really recognize what loneliness is during the pandemic and what it feels like to not have real social connection and to literally just be disconnected from people. And so for some of us, it would be like this call to action almost in our bodies. You need to do something else. It's not even, I might be interested, like I need to do something else. And it sounds like your body was kind of saying, I need social connection. I need to at least be interacting with people. You had to leave. You had to go and do something else.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Where was it for you that you listened to yourself in that I can balance this, or I need to navigate what this balance looks like in my interests? And I know that my body's saying I need to go and follow something that allows me to be immersed with other people.
So I think I just have such a pull like in my brain, in my body, to be around people and to be social. It's kind of become ingrained in me with the years that I spent in the beauty industry and being in the arts in general. I have to be around people. I just do. Or else I don't thrive the way that I like to. So I think I was definitely being pulled out of my home, out of my little office nest, however you want to describe that. And I was kind of pushing myself to make a change that would allow that to kind of thrive and explore, just something else where I can put all my skill set together and just find a way to be present in the world and help people and be creative and, do all of the things that I like to do just in a different way. So I think real estate has been really great for me to grow all of that together. And of course, there's, the skills and the knowledge and market knowledge and things like that come with just doing it, learning about real estate and being active in real estate every day and following the numbers, following the new listings, things like that. That all just comes with doing it. But the interpersonal skills and human connection and feeling like I can teach my clients, I can guide them, and I can advocate for them and their best interests. That's something that I've done for a long time now in every career that I've had. So this just kind of gets put together in a really unique way. And I love it.
Yeah. So thinking about like pillars of human flourishing are like awareness. I can become aware of what my body may be communicating to me. And so if I'm able to be more aware in my life, awareness allows for choice. If we have no awareness, there's no choice. So you could have been denying all day long that you had all these other needs because, well, I technically have a job and I should just be satisfied with this. And it feels too scary to approach something else. So I'm just going to block it. It sounds like you have like this window that's open to like be aware and to trust yourself to navigate an experience, even if it means pivoting. So that awareness in those, in our own life allows for a deeper insight about our experiences and the learning that our experiences fosters. So it's really, really challenging to just read something and have an experiential understanding of something, right? You have to kind of immerse yourself in it to gain that knowledge. And then when we do, we have that deeper insight, and that helps us be more connected with ourselves, which also helps us be more connected with other people. So for you, it sounds like all this navigation for you has allowed you to develop these social skill sets that you weren't blocking or suppressing. You're just navigating and following to the next thing. And then you take that information and that wisdom and you keep applying it, and then you share it with other people. In your social skills and your understanding of people going through adaptations, how do you feel like that has allowed you to connect? Whether it's this, I'm sure you would also be good at doing a lot of different things with the skills that you have, but like how you're applying your own awareness of these adjustments and these challenges and these decisions that you yourself have made. How does that help you help other people also navigate those experiences?
So I have been through a lot of transition periods in my life. I grew up in this area, and then I left for college, and I moved around a lot, and I stayed and I worked, and I had 2 successful careers before getting into real estate. So all of those are transitions. I've moved more times than I can count. So the people that I deal with, my clients every day, are going through that same exact transition. It's probably for different reasons than what mine were, but I know how I navigated that each time that I did. And I know how I navigated, shifting and pivoting in my career and in my personal life because of those changes. So I think that I just have a lot of experience that I can share with people. And maybe it's not the best way to shift, but I can share personal experience and how I've done that and how I've been able to, always, for example, always try to make new friends in the places that I move to, right? And try to make a connection with the area. That's one thing that can be really, really difficult in this town specifically because it is such a college town. A lot of folks think that our population here is college students and retirees. And yes, those both exist here, but there's also every single middle range, So you have to kind of do some exploring and do some soul searching, I guess, to figure out what you want out of this town. And for me, I want connection, I want to connect to my clients. I want to have a group of friends that I can count on. I want to have people in shops and restaurants and things like that know who I am. I love going into the same coffee shop or different coffee shop and sitting down and knowing 5 people that are in there and having conversations and just helping each other with our day-to-day lives, like we have conversations and you might be having the worst day and then you walk into, Cafe Lamont and you see somebody that you haven't spoken to in a while and you're like, hey, it's good to see you, so those little like trivial parts of your day can be really, really special. And I think that we don't give that enough credit. The places that I've lived in my life that have had the most meaning to me have been towns and neighborhoods that I've had these kind of connections that with people that I see every day, or I see them even once a month. And it's just always a really good interaction, a really good conversation. And it feels welcoming. That can be a really hard thing to cultivate whenever you're new. So I like to give some advice to people, to my clients that are new to town. And I just like them to think outside the box a little bit and go try new things, right? So we have such a strong restaurant community here in State College and in Bellefonte, and a lot of the surrounding areas have their own little pockets that are just really special. I think it's really, really cool to go to the restaurants and talk to your server, talk to your bartender, talk to the host, and just learn a little bit about them. Every person that you speak with will have a different experience in this area, and they might say like, oh, have you tried this store just down the street? Have you been in there yet? It's just opened or whatever. And then you can go and you can talk to that person. And it's just all about expanding your network, I guess, to talk about it in like a business sense. Everybody talks about networking, and I think personal networking and creating just a friend group in that way can be really, really cool. It doesn't always have to be about business, just forming friendships and getting to know people and feeling like you belong in the community. It's really, really wonderful to walk in somewhere and know someone that's there and just say, hey, how are you? Right? It starts to feel like home whenever you have those connections.
Yeah, I think something that is somewhat undervalued. Taking it back to, you've had experience with transitions and understanding what it means to attempt to integrate into a new community. And no matter how many times you do that, it is hard.
Absolutely.
It is like excruciatingly hard. And to be able to have like someone, not even necessarily just because of the realty position, but to be able to say in your interactions, you may not be saying it explicitly, like, oh, based on my experience, and then going out through like the entire novel, right? Your kind of entire story. Your story is in how you're communicating with them. The knowledge that you know and how you're interacting with them is also your life experience.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
when you're making recommendations for neighborhoods, you're understanding the individuals where they're coming from, and you're also combining that with your own lived experience to help inform how this is going to help them integrate. Yep. So there's so much wisdom in like our own lived experiences. And when we trust ourselves to tap into that and not just be like, well, that's not my place. It's like, well, community is and should be everybody's place. Absolutely. And helping people, just giving them options and information, is a part of human connection. It's not, well, that goes outside my like job jurisdiction or something. It's like, well, then that leads to disconnection, because how are you helping this person with their own culture shock? Even if they're moving from like 2 hours away, it's still culture shock. It's still an entirely new neighborhood. Right. So I think we tend to underestimate the beauty of that human connection of just saying like, I don't know exactly what you're going through, and I understand what this is like. And if I can show this humility and this humanity and understanding this transition and giving you the resources that I have and some tips and tricks based on like, if you've had to adapt to other towns, right? Especially as an adult, and you know how hard that is, and you can help support their own fear in navigating those situations by saying, I know that's hard, and try to strike up a conversation. You're then giving a little bit of information of saying they're going to be comfortable with it. You're not going to come off as bizarre or peculiar by striking up a conversation in this community with someone and just seeing what happens.
Yeah. Everyone here is so friendly, and people are always willing to talk with strangers. So
yeah.
and
new community members.
Absolutely. Yeah. New folks that move here. I think it's actually easier than they expect it to be to meet people and to try and, blend into the community and find their place, just because folks are so friendly here. Everybody is willing to talk to you. They'll talk to you about the weather. They'll talk to you about, kids or local events or the school or whatever, You really bats an eye when you go up and you just say like, hey, is there anything fun going on this weekend? There probably is.
Yeah. Yeah. So like being able to provide, like, yes, we could say that that's a service, but I think beyond that is just being able to provide human connection in a challenging time, an exciting time for a lot of people. Transitions aren't necessarily just negative, but any transition is stressful. It doesn't matter how positive it is. Anything Absolutely. That causes a change is stress. And so when we know that we have other people that are helping us through that stress, our body, it relaxes, because it's that connection that we need. Just say like, someone is looking out for me a little bit here and helping me feel a little bit more confident in this experience. And maybe I only know a few people, but I know that my realtor who's helping me through this situation, they may be the only other person I know. I don't feel uncomfortable by just saying, hey, do you have something about this? Or you have some information? Or could you share something with me that, where's a good place to go? So
I get those questions all the time,
Yeah. Yeah. Them even feeling like they can continue to engage with that, or even just ask questions. That depends on connection. And you could, Kayleen, you could very well be a jerk and still be a realtor in the community. It is possible, right? So especially like, I feel like in some of our communities in the past 2 years, especially, I don't always think you have to have a pristine personality or the kindest person in the world to sell things sometimes, especially when people are competing for houses. It's like you're looking for a shark to help with some of these things, right? But people tend to be drawn to those who are warm and understanding and have empathy, right? Like that human connection is just, it's so important, but it's so valuable. Just kind of talking a little bit about you getting into real estate during and like as the pandemic is kind of like unfolding. How have you noticed getting into the market at this time? It's been a very tumultuous, I would say, ebbing and flowing of like what's happening. I know when we bought our house before, multiple years before the pandemic, it was a completely different landscape. So can you speak on that a little bit? And, has it changed the people who are coming into the community right now? Has it changed who are selling?
Yeah. So I think, especially in State College, it has always been that ebb and flow of people come and people leave. There's just always constant turnover because of the university and because of the hospital systems that are here, the medical facilities. There's just so much transition through those positions that people are always buying and selling. We've seen the market kind of go a little wild. So since the pandemic, we are just facing an inventory shortage, which is actually happening nationally. So folks are staying in their homes longer than they ever have before. So typically people will move in the first 7 to 10 years. So they'll sell, they'll upgrade, or they'll downsize, or, these life transitions tend to happen every 7 to 10 years. So people change their home with that. We're seeing folks stay longer than that now because there aren't the new builds that used to happen pre-pandemic. Like building had stalled for a long time. So they didn't have these communities to move into if they were upgrading or, whatever the situation was. So they would stay and they would get comfortable. And then, of course, interest rates went higher than we had seen in decades, or maybe not decades, but for 10 plus years, interest rates went higher and that scared people. Now, I think we're at a point where interest rates have started to come down, which is wonderful. I don't think we're ever going to see the 3% interest rate or lower again. That held on for way too long. It was essentially banks giving free money away. So I don't think that's going to happen. But where we are now is a much more stable place. I think folks locally are starting to realize that we're not going to see the 3% anymore. My house is feeling too small. Maybe I have another kid, or kids are transitioning to high school or something like that, and I just need more space. So now people are selling and buying larger homes or downsizing and buying something smaller, right? So we're seeing more of that transition from, one home to the next happen. We also have an influx of people from out Center County coming here, so other areas in Pennsylvania, we get a lot of folks that move to State College for whatever the reason is, whether they have a job at Penn State or one of the businesses here, or they just love it because of that college town feel. So we're having a lot of influx of new folks, which I think is great. One interesting thing that I learned just a couple weeks ago, there are only 3 counties in Pennsylvania that are growing. The rest are in decline. And Center County is one that is growing. So it's Allegheny County where Pittsburgh is, and then one of the counties surrounding Philadelphia. They are growing, but the rest is in decline. So what is it that's different about these areas? What is bringing people here instead of somewhere else? I think it's, just that people can live here easily. It's safe. It's friendly. There's so much to do, and it's absolutely beautiful. Like you go anywhere else and there are pros and cons, of course, but State College and Happy Valley and, the farmland and everything surrounding here is just objectively beautiful.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
You left here for a long time, so.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is when you grow up, like I wasn't originally from like Center County, but I moved here fairly young, and thinking about like how the community has just evolved in so many ways. It has stayed the same. And in also all these other ways, there's like, I don't know, like an artistic culture that I don't know if I would have necessarily been aware of it when I was younger, but now it's just like there's an entrepreneurship, or there's I think one of the things about the history of Happy Valley and why Happy Valley has this name, and you may be familiar with this too, is during the Great Depression, it was an area that was able to sustain economically because there was industry here, and it was industry that was local. And that helped protect Center County in maintaining a little bit of a buffer from, the unfortunate, disaster of like the economic collapse, after the stock market crashed almost 100 years ago. So thinking about how this community has been like established by these individual connections and these relationships, I think I see that so much now. And also and it's me also being like this entrepreneur, and I'm trying to connect with all these other individuals in the community. So I'm seeing it now where I didn't necessarily see it a few years ago, but I haven't been back terribly long. So for me, like it is so beautiful and it's so safe. There's so much effort in maintaining this community and trying to strategically support all the different cultural elements of this community, I think is just so unique and beautiful. And I think too that like this area is really focusing on figuring out industry so it can continue to be like that Happy Valley. Like how can we be self-sustaining in this place and not just build up into suburban malls, because those carry their own economic problems. And too, like economically, I think with Pennsylvania and also like nationally, it's a lot of small towns aren't doing very well when they don't have any industry because there's no business there. So there's some natural decline because there's no industry, because industry is getting pulled to all these other places. So I think when I think about like this area and the community connection, as with any community, any of this building, any of the economy, it relies on human connection. It relies on people facilitating relationships with each other that are not just about business. If it's business first, your community is going to fail. If it's people first, and then watching your business flourish through that, you're going to do good things. And I think this area really tries to focus on the community first and foremost before they just kind of like, and I think that when a business does tend to come off a little bit as like business first, they're like, there's like a feeling about it, it's just, they kind of like stick out a little bit like a sore thumb. I don't know if you ever noticed that, or if I'm just a social worker and I'm very particular about like noticing those things, but I'm
I agree with you.
It's like, you got to get back in line, man. Like you need to be more social here.
Yeah, absolutely. Very unique place, and businesses run in a very different way here than I think they do in other places because of that. I think our town is so chatty. The folks in our town love sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, and there's nothing that'll stop them from doing that.
But it's that civil discourse that keeps individuals, connecting with each other, right? So I think even like kind of bringing it back to like your role in your position here, it's to help facilitate like the culture and just sharing like this culture, so individuals have an easier job navigating where they feel like they can integrate that feels right for them, right? Where is it that you find that when individuals are coming into this community, what are some of those stuck points for them, and how do you preemptively kind of acknowledge where some of those stuck points are and help them through it?
Yeah, so I think a huge one is if folks have children, they want to know about the school system here. They want to know, if they have young kids, they want to know the difference between the elementary schools and State College versus Bellefonte versus Penns Valley versus Bald Eagle. They want to know what the differences are and what's offered at all of those schools so that they can then decide what is best for them and their family. I don't have a lot to do with that, as far as sharing information and things like that. That's more of a personal research for clients, as it should be, but I'm there to help them. And if they have questions for me, I'll help them find answers, and I'll point them in the right direction of someone they can talk to at the school system, and go and meet with, the guidance counselors or whatever if they need to, and see what's a good fit for their children, right? Because moving to a new area, you probably don't even know what the schools are called until you start looking at housing. So my job definitely starts all of this like find a house, they love the house, and then they're like, okay, what is the school like there? That tends to be the first step when people start looking here. And then once they start to navigate the little minutia, like the little specifics of the area, then they'll dive a little deeper into, what they're actually hoping for. So like if someone wants Bellefonte High School, they'll only look in Bellefonte, obviously. And so we kind of take those things and we pare down their search and try and find something that ticks all the boxes or most of the boxes. Yeah, so I'd say like school is definitely one of the major ones. I think too, a lot of folks that move here are either coming from very rural areas and think that, maybe State College is a big town, or they're coming from a city and they're like, this whole area is surrounded by farmland, what is there to do in State College? Right. So I think figuring out where my clients land on that spectrum will help me to show them areas that they might prefer over others. Right. I'm never going to cross anything out as like, oh, this is not an option. Like, you won't like this area. It is 100% my client's choice. If they want to see houses in every neighborhood in town, I am more than happy to show them houses in every neighborhood in town, But I think a lot of folks don't really know what the options are here. So digging in with them and exploring some things. One big thing is doing a town tour whenever folks are even first considering moving to State College or to Bellefonte. And we just drive around to different neighborhoods and I point out, what the neighborhoods are called, and we'll kind of look in what they think their price range is, because that tends to go neighborhood by neighborhood. We'll drive through the downtown. If they prefer more of the rural setting, we'll go to Bellefonte and Pleasant Gap and Zion and, Port Matilda.
It makes sense to like that, like when people are kind of coming in and they're like, I don't even know where to start. And I think you even kind of like growing up in this area and the community, there's just like this history here where you understand, we know, like I know, just like because I went and had my undergrad here too, that there's certain streets even that, I think about the Sears houses that are by the Blue Course golf course. Yeah. And that community with like those 1930s, 1940s Sears homes that were like those built to like, I know some of that history. I'm like, I love that style and I love that history of those homes. And then you can go back into another area, behind like the main like kind of center strip of State College, and you have houses there that are coming from, it could be like the 1930s, and then you go down a couple of rows and then it's like 1972 has hit real hard right here, or 1960, and like there's history, in these little small pockets, helping individuals that there, you could have a home here that could be from 17 something, 1780 or 1820, and then you could have a brand new model that has been built from 2024. So there's such a history here in a land grant institution, and there's just so much that can be navigated just knowing, again, like the culture of the community, because there's so much in just like this school district and what's even here, within a mile and a half radius, and like you just know these things. And so there's an ease of, again, like that wisdom of I can share this experience without necessarily having to give them a book or an encyclopedia of all this. I'm living with it, and then I get to share it with them, and I get to immerse them in living in this too, just through having conversation, right? Or just having a cup of tea and like taking them through, like if you go to California and you could take a bus ride and like it'll take you to like all the spots, right? But that's what you're doing. It's like this is it. This is like what it looks like here. This is like the atmosphere. Are there any other things that you feel like regarding navigating real estate in Happy Valley or navigating this market even right now that you'd like to share before we get into our fundamentals?
I think that it's just very situational. Everybody has their own goals for, for their life and for their real estate purchases or their sale or, what have you. So I think your best option, if you are thinking about making a change in real estate or even adding to a real estate portfolio, whether it's a rental or, a weekend home, anything like that, I think your best option is to try to find a realtor that you can connect with and that can help you out and that can guide you and teach you about the market, teach you about real estate in general, and just kind of lean into them and let us help you, you know? Sometimes people get so like anti-realtor. We really just want to help you. We really just want to help you. I want my clients to have the best house that they can get for what they are comfortable offering, you know? And I want them to feel like they can build a home here. I want them to, you know, even if it's a weekend home that you're buying, I want you to want to come here. Because our town is so great. And I love sharing everything about Happy Valley, you know, from State College to Bellefonte to like all the surrounding areas. The Amish farms that we have around here are so unique and so interesting. And if you've never explored that part of Happy Valley, you should. You know, if you live in downtown State College and you never leave downtown State College, what's stopping you? You know, go check it out and learn from it, because you're right. There is so much history here. It's such a interesting community and we all connect differently with different parts of it. So just utilize what is offered here and just find your space. And I think it's so easy to, you know, to make your own place in Happy Valley. Like, make this your home, make this your community, as long as you try. If you try, it'll happen.
Yeah. Putting yourself out there is the hardest part.
Yeah.
And even the difficulty of like, I'll spend $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 on a house, and that feels easier than trying to like integrate with the community.
Then talk neighbors.
Like, yeah. It's like, man, that was the easy part. It's like, okay, well, let's take some of that into perspective a little bit too. So it will naturally be hard to integrate with anywhere. And it's okay if your hands are sweating or you're stuttering or you like are unsure about integrating or having any kind of conversation with anyone, and do it anyway. So try to do it anyway. Try to like make it a point or even schedule those opportunities to connect as often as possible. And the best thing that will happen is that you'll start making relationships sooner rather than later. The worst thing that's going to happen is like, maybe I don't talk to that guy again. Right? So it's like, well, no, I know I'm not going to go. But that is not going to happen nearly as frequently as, hey, someone's willing to step up, someone's willing to share, someone's willing to connect. So
and you can always say, have an appointment, I have to go. Right.
So you can still use the same skills of like those awkward interactions as you would anywhere else.
Right.
So, but like here or anywhere, it's being in such a safe community that sometimes feels a little bit like there should be like some cartoon rainbow that just kind of like comes out. Although it should, you know, we need more of those cartoon rainbows, I think, especially during like our gray months of the year. It's like that would be good.
That would be helpful.
But
yes.
Yeah. But like sometimes there is such a safety here that most of the time, the worst thing that's going to happen is like a awkward exchange. It's not going to be an unsafe exchange. Mm-hmm. Not saying like you should always exercise caution. So at the same time, you know, being in this community, there's a lot more room for just a playfulness and a creative and a like just focusing on the connection and not necessarily having to worry about, you know, what's going to happen to your car or, you know, any of these other potential things. So lean into exposing yourself to just having that connection. And Kayleen is obviously very willing to connect with you, as are many other people in this community, to navigate social connection. And if you've been here forever, and if you've been here for 50 years, and you haven't done it yet, and you're wondering whether or not you should start making connections or if it's too late for you, it never is. So it always feels like you're ripping off a Band-Aid, but there's always a good time to start, and that could be today. So see if you can make it a point once a week, 1 hour a week, even if you're just going into a restaurant and you're just immersing yourself, or you're going to a park and you're saying hi to someone. Those could be really great stepping stones to just building more connection, and you're a part of this community, and we all would love you to be more and more a part of this community. So Kayleen, what are your fundamentals?
Yeah, so I just want to go off of what you just said really briefly.
Please do.
Yeah, so going to a cafe once a week, that is something that I do, sometimes more often than once a week. I'm a big coffee and tea person, so often. But I will go into the local cafes. I'll do work for 30 minutes, an hour, and just sit there, enjoy my cup of coffee, and talk to people that are around me. I'll go to the parks, like you said. There are so many beautiful public parks here, and everyone is so friendly. So people will wave at you or they'll nod, and you can kind of pick up some cues. If people wave, they might be willing to strike up a conversation with you. So just try it. Just try it.
Right. Absolutely. And we have so many parks. I don't know any other town that has as many parks as we do. There's something about like that we are, based on the number of trees that we have here, we have a certain kind of like statute of being like a tree community. Yeah. But in any case, thanks for sharing that, Kayleen. What would be some of your fundamentals that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think connection is number one. So it's a huge part of who I am. I value connection with my friends, with my family, with strangers. That's kind of what we've been talking about most of today is connection, human connection. So I think that, at least for me, is key to flourishing. I think being able to connect with a stranger or the person that you see in the gas station whenever you're, paying for your gas. It's super important and super helpful to growing a community and growing your network and being part of a small town. I also think makes it easier to feel at home here if you kind of dive into that a little bit more. I think it also leads to you finding a purpose. The more people you talk to, the more people you connect with, the more it's going to open your eyes to, other things that maybe you hadn't known before. And it might help you just develop who you are a little bit better, a little more thoroughly.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited that you just said that with that purposeful, meaningful living, because when we feel like we can be in an atmosphere that we can be ourselves in and like authentically, provide something that's of interest to us. So like you were saying about, this is a place for you to combine your interests that are intrinsically your own, and that you feel like you have a place to meet your needs and your like higher order, like authenticity, like I'm living meaningfully in this space. Like it feels right to me. Right. So when we think about like our intrinsic needs, it's yes, we need to feel safe. We need to feel like we can have our basic needs met, social connection, and feeling like people see you and appreciate you as you are, and that you feel like you can contribute your own unique interests and your own unique gifts to your community, and that your community wants to receive it. And then it's a reciprocal thing. That sounds like it should be very obvious and just happen. Obviously it doesn't. I would say that we are living in a loneliness epidemic nationally and internationally. People are very isolated still. People are very lonely. And it often comes down to fear, that we are afraid to be ourselves. We're afraid to be connecting with other people. We're afraid of rejection. And instead of connecting, we block ourselves off and say, well, it's better to be safe than to try and be hurt. And I'd say, please try and see what happens. And if you fall down, pick yourself back up again and keep moving forward. So like Kayleen, with your life experience with this, it sounds like the more that you just trusted yourself to kind of navigate, it felt less like you're swimming upstream and more like you're just finding the streams that were naturally coming around the bend, and you would follow that.
Right.
So I don't want to speak for you, but was that something that, it felt like the more that you were not struggling against the current, the more things kind of just played out in your favor?
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to open yourself up to possibilities. So no matter what you do in life, there are many ways that it can shift or it can turn out differently than you anticipated. But I think instead of being fearful of things, what if it goes wrong? What if it doesn't? What if it goes in this perfect way where you get everything that you've ever wanted? What happens if all of your goals and all of your wants and all of your desires are met? What if that's the way that it goes? You can't sit here and say oh, I'm so scared. What if it goes wrong? It's probably going to go in a way that's going to align with your future goals anyway. So just kind of trust the process and trust yourself to guide yourself in the direction that you should be going.
Exactly. Love that you said that. and, stamp of yes, learning how to trust ourselves and leaning into trust falling, which is something that I say all the time. Trust fall on yourself over and over and over again. Trust that you're going to know the difference between good decisions and not so great decisions, and also know the difference between the lesser of the two evils sometimes in situations that are not always the most perfect. And no matter what, if you're focusing on your values and your unique interests in that space, and you're doing the best you can with what you have right now, it will be easier than trying to paddle upstream. You will find the next course of action. And I think, today, Kayleen, you talking about your role and your job and just like sharing how that all has unfolded for you. I think some of the work of like this podcast is finding the extraordinary in ordinary life. And this is like meaningful living is the extraordinary, and we can all experience it. So what's your quote today?
My quote is, love where you live in Happy Valley. So that is my goal. It's my mantra for all of my clients and just life in general. Love where you live, make yourself part of the community. Where you live isn't just your house. You can have the most beautiful, beautiful home, and it fits your personality and your style to a T. But you also need to get out in the community, and you need to make that your home as well, or else you might be facing that loneliness like you talked about, Kelly, and that can be really hard, really hard, and it's hard to break into a new community, but I think it's definitely worthwhile, and it's super, super valuable. And I love living here, so I'm always happy to share my little tips and tricks, so if you need a little boost, let me know.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then you can check out Ellen Mattis's episode, because she talks about how you use social media to actually increase in-person social connection. Yeah. So like, we have a lot of different resources, even online, that help facilitate getting connected with other people, real life, in person, and fostering that community. So don't just sit on the sidelines on social media. Don't doom scroll, connect with Kayleen, connect with all these other wonderful people and women in our community and otherwise. But thank you, Kayleen, for doing this with us today. And it's been a wonderful episode. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast. I hope this episode gave you some valuable tools and helped you feel more connected to yourself and others. Get more life, family, and career fundamentals when you follow Know Your Fundamentals on social media, including Instagram and YouTube. You can also join the Fundamentals Life, Family, and Career Wellness Facebook group. There you'll get access to live trainings, helpful resources, Q&As with our guests, and professional mom community that's here to support you in thriving your way. I'm cheering you on, and I hope to hear from you soon.